Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 21, Text 16. Prajapatiste vachasadhishatantya. Prajapatiste vachasadhishatantya. Loka kilayam kamahata nubaddha. Loka kilayam kamahato nubaddha. Aham cha lokanugato vahami. Aham cha lokanugato vahami. Balim cha shuklani mishaya tubhyam. Balim cha shuklani mishaya tubhyam. Okay. Prajapate, who are the master of all living entities. Te, of you, Vachasa, under the direction. Adhisha, O my Lord. Tantya, by a rope. Loka, conditioned souls. Kila, indeed. Ayam, these. Kamahata, conquered by lusty desires. Anubadha, are bound. Aham, I. Cha, and. Loka anugata, following the conditioned souls. Vahami, offer. Balim, oblations. Cha, and. Shukla, O embodiment of religion. Ani, Mishaya, existing as eternal time. Tubhyam, to you. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, you are the master and leader of all living entities. Under your direction, all conditioned souls, as if bound by rope, are constantly engaged in satisfying their desires. Following them, O embodiment of religion, I also bear oblations for you, who are eternal time. Once again, O my Lord, you are the master and leader of all living entities. Under your direction, all conditioned souls, as if bound by a rope, are constantly engaged in satisfying their desires. Following them, O embodiment of religion, I also bear oblations for you, who are eternal time. Purport. In the Katha Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Lord is the leader of all living entities. He is their sustainer and the awarder of all their necessities and desires. No living entity is independent. All are dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Vedic instruction is that one should enjoy life under the direction of the Supreme Leader, the personality of Godhead. Vedic literatures like Ishopanishad direct that since everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not encroach upon another's property, but should enjoy one's individual allotment. The best program for every living entity is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and enjoy material or spiritual life. A question may be raised, since Gardama Muni was advanced in spiritual life, why then did he not ask the Lord for liberation? Why did he want to enjoy material life in spite of his personally seeing and experiencing the Supreme Lord? The answer is that not everyone is competent to be liberated from material bondage. It is therefore everyone's duty to enjoy according to his present position, but under the direction of the Lord or the Vedas. The Vedas are considered to be the direct words of the Lord. The Lord gives us the opportunity to enjoy mature life as we want, and at the same time he gives directions for the modes and processes of abiding by the Vedas, so that gradually one may be elevated to liberation from material bondage. The conditioned souls who have come to the material world to fulfill their desires, to lord it over material nature, are bound by the laws of nature. The best course is to abide by the Vedic rules that will help one to be gradually elevated to liberation. Gardha Muni addresses the Lord as Shuka, which means the leader of religion. One who is pious should follow the rules of religion, for such rules are prescribed by the Lord himself. No one can manufacture or concoct a religion. Religion refers to the injunctions or laws of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that religion means to surrender unto him. Therefore, one should follow the Vedic regulations and surrender unto the Supreme Lord, because that is the ultimate goal of perfection in human life. One should live a life of piety, following the religious rules and regulations. Marry and live peacefully for elevation to the higher status of spiritual realization. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Tadadi Swapadantikam. Hare Krishna, good morning. Welcome everyone. I'll just read the translation one more time. O my Lord, you are the master and leader of all living entities. Under your direction, all conditioned souls, as if bound by a rope, are constantly engaged in satisfying their desires. Following them, O embodiment of religion, I also bear oblations for you, who are eternal time. So, this is a very beautiful verse, and there's another verse in the Bhagavatam that comes to mind when reading this translation and this purport, and that is akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaridi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta parama puma. That if one has akama sarva kama va, if one has no material desires, akama has no material desires, kama has many material desires, akama sarva kama va, moksha kama, one is desirous of liberation, tivrena bhakti yogena. Still, if one engages in intense tivra bhakti yogena, one attains the highest destination, the highest goal. So that is the beauty of the process of bhakti. That if we engage in the process of devotional service, if we engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, devotional service, whatever our motivations are, whatever our material desires are, Krishna purifies those and drags us to the highest destination. Prabhupada in one place says, he actually uses this word drag. He says, beauty of devotional service is that even if we don't want to go through to Krishna, even if we are, wanting to go in the opposite direction, if we engage in devotional service, Krishna forcibly drags us to his lotus feet. Krishna arranges our life in such a way, right, that we get difficulties and problems such that we have to surrender to Krishna. And this is why people are afraid sometimes to take to the process of devotional service, because um, they don't want to hear because they know for a fact that if I engage in this process, then I'm connected. You know, it's like it's like getting a virus, right? We just had this pandemic. And if you once you get the virus, you know that, well, it's going to stay with me, especially if there's no cure for it. It's a, something like that. It's going to stay with me. And I want it or I don't, it's going to keep, you know, it's going to be there. So this is like an opposite example. In the same way, Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga is like a spiritual virus. Once we are infected by it, then gradually Krishna keeps bringing us back to him. So many times we get this experience, like people, um, they'll you know, people who are new to Krishna consciousness, or who are just not into Krishna consciousness, it's not just that they don't accept Krishna consciousness, but sometimes you'll find they're very averse to accepting it. Like even if you um, uh, share something, they don't want to hear it. They'll actually change the subject quickly. Or if you want to give them a book even for free, they don't want to take it. Or they have a nice circle of friends amongst the devotees, um, but they don't want to visit them. Like this one man, he was um, he was a good friend. Like he really liked the friendship and everything, but he didn't want to come to the temple. And I asked him, I said, well, why don't you, just come for the friendship? Don't worry about the philosophy. Don't worry about, practicing anything. Just come because, your friends are there and you like coming. I said, oh, no, 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 no. I know if I come, then, then, then you will all discuss spiritual things. And I said, then what's the problem? I mean, but no, no, no. I know that it will affect me. Well, then if it's good, if it affects you, then that means you're liking it. That's why it's going to affect you. It means you're interested in it. That's why it'll affect you. So no, 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 no. I won't come. I won't do this. Because they know that there's something real. There's something very genuine in this. It's something that if I'm associated with it, my spiritual desires will develop and my material desires will go down. It's just a matter of time. Just like sometimes I assign a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to my students at the university. And Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. Um, and one thing that I notice is that a lot of the students like it, the majority like it, and some of them dislike it. They don't like it. But whether they like it or they don't like it, none of them can stay neutral to it. It's not like someone reads it. I mean, if they don't read it, that's a different thing. But if they read it, it's not like they just say, oh, okay, read it, read it like I read so many things. It always creates a response because it touches the heart. And either they're ready for it, they're open to it, or they're not ready for it. But the response has to be there because it touches the heart. The response is always there. So, akama sarva kamo vai moksha kamo dariti, that whatever our motivation is, if we engage in devotional service draws us to the lotus feet of Krishna. And this is why this is the entire theme of this purport, where Prabhupada is asking that why is Garda Muni, uh, why is he asking Krishna for material things? Why is he wanting to enjoy material life? And Srila Prabhupada is saying that's okay. But if we must enjoy under the direction of Lord Krishna. It's okay if we want to enjoy, but we must seek the Lord for the enjoyment because that's devotional service. And then we can become purified and one day transcend those desires, come to the platform of spiritual life. So, so that's That's the key point here. That taking shelter of Krishna, taking the direction of Krishna in every position in life is 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 the difference, right? So if kama is okay, then what's the difference between um, a karma yogi and a karmi, right? Because both have kama, both have desire, but one is seeking the Lord's shelter to fulfill those desires. One is uh, taking refuge in the Lord, and the other is just doing it out of their own, pursuing sense gratification without taking shelter of the Lord. And that taking shelter of the Lord is tivrena bhakti yogena. We can have our material desires, but what purifies the heart isn't the artificial uh, renunciation of those desires, but what purifies the heart is tivrena bhakti yogena, is the intense engagement in devotional service. So that cannot be stopped, right? That cannot be stopped. Material desires we can have, but if we also give up the process of devotional service, then the material desires will just remain material desires. Yes, eventually, if we've started the process brings us back, like a Jamil. At the end of his life, Krishna brought him back. But if we want a faster process, then it is the taking refuge in devotional service, the practice of devotional service, the practice of intense devotional service that purifies the heart and brings us to the platform of pure love. So, my Bhakti Shastri teacher, he used to say that renunciation is not the means of purification. Renunciation is the result of purification. So then what's the means of purification? The means of purification is devotional service. And what is devotional service? Chanting and hearing and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, particularly this process of chanting the holy name of Krishna, our regular sadhana, our regular devotional practices, and regular devotional service to Krishna. That process is what helps us get rid of those material desires. So rather than focusing or encouraging people to give up their material desires, rather than pursuing them to give up their material desires, we should encourage them to take up the process. And then the material desires go away automatically. I observed this many times that someone is coming to the programs and they're very tight. They're very tight. You talk to them and try to say, oh, how are you, and meet with them, and they're just whatever you say, it's like you poke them with a pin, and they become tighter, and yet they have an attraction. And so if they keep coming, then one day, just mystically, they soften up. One day it's like the same person wouldn't even talk to me or was completely tight, didn't want to hear anything. But then one day they're just, telling you about their problems and this and that. It all happens because the magic is in the process. People take to the process of Krishna consciousness and things start to make sense. The heart becomes softened, and the association is nice, and the heart opens to Krishna. So Prabhupada here says a very interesting sentence. He says, the best program for every living entity is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and enjoy material or spiritual life. This is the best program, he's saying. So even in the best program, we can enjoy material life. But is to take direction, to live our life according to the direction of Krishna, and then we can enjoy material or spiritual life. In one place in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that um, that the perfection of life is to have a very nice present life, to be materially and spiritually successful, and then at the end of life to go back home, back to Godhead. It's very interesting. He says that even in this life to be, materially satisfied. So a devotee is also materially satisfied. Devotees actually enjoying material life, but not in a material way, but they're enjoying material life. But their focus is Krishna. They've taken shelter of Krishna. They've taken shelter of the process. And at the end, they reach the destination, right? Just like the demigods are a wonderful example of this, that they are enjoying material life big time. And the demons are also enjoying material life. But the difference between the demigods and the demigods being very dear to the Lord. Everyone is dear to the Lord, including the demons, but the demigods being especially dear to the Lord. The difference is that they take shelter of Krishna in every problem. They are following religious principles. They are performing their prescribed duties, and therefore they are devotees of Krishna. Prabhupada here at the end says, one who is pious should follow the rules of religion, for such rules are prescribed by the Lord himself. See, dharma pleases the Lord. We sometimes minimize dharma too much in our movement. Okay, it's all about, devotional service bhakti. But what is bhakti? What is love? Love means that we want to please the person that we love. So bhakti means that we'll want to follow the rules of dharma, the principles set down by the Supreme Lord. And when we follow that, then Krishna becomes very pleased. It's described among all the Pandavas, Mother Kunti and the 5 Pandavas, Draupadi. There's one person that Krishna would never say no to. Whatever he asked, Krishna would fulfill. And that was Maharaj Yudhishthir. And it's described that Maharaj Yudhishthir was so dear to Krishna. He would never say no to anything because he had pleased Krishna so much by his dharma. Because dharma pleases the Lord. We have in our movement, right? In our philosophy, we have the principle of chanting. But along with that, we have the 4 regulated principles. And these are basically the rules of religion, the rules and regulations of religion. These are our ethical principles. These 4 principles are not exactly spiritual principles. But then why are they necessary? Even a meat eater can go back home, back to Godhead. A gambler can see the Supreme Lord. But then why are they mentioned? Because following these is an expression of love for Krishna. Krishna is pleased when we follow these. Our chanting has more potency. The chanting acts more quickly when we follow the rules of religion, when we perform dharma. No one can manufacture or concoct a religion. Religion refers to the injunctions or laws of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that religion means to surrender unto Him. Therefore, one should follow the Vedic regulations and surrender unto the Supreme Lord, because that is the ultimate goal of perfection in human life. So Prabhupada here is saying the goal is to surrender. But how do we get there? By following the Vedic regulations. And that is also part of surrender. One should follow the Vedic regulations and surrender. One should live a life of piety. Why is it necessary to live a life of piety? I thought we were all about love. Life of piety is there because that is love. Living a life of piety is trying to live a life of love. Following the religious rules and regulations. And then Prabhupada mentions specifically marry and live peacefully for elevation to the higher status of spiritual realization. So he's explaining why is Karda Muni wanting to get married. He's saying because he is the leader of religion. Krishna is the leader of religion. And this is the process of religion that is set down by the Lord. And Karda Muni wants to follow that. He has material desires and he's thinking, let me get married. Let me follow the principles of fulfilling those desires, the process of fulfilling those desires. Let me follow that and become the leader of, follow religious principles, become an example of following these religious principles. So, that is dharma, but that is also devotional service. And this is why dharma can become devotional service if we're doing it for Krishna. And devotional service involves performing dharma for Krishna. Just like we have different ethical principles. Somehow we're talking about ethics today. So there's like, virtue ethics, there's consequentialism. And what Krishna consciousness teaches is what has been coined by some devotees, bhakti ethics. The devotee is also being ethical. The devotee is also being moral. But their motivation for doing that is love, right? They're being ethical, but they're performing those ethical principles for Krishna, not to please him. So it becomes not just for the rules and regulations in themselves, but it becomes a reciprocation, a way of life. And a devotee, therefore, does not neglect their duties towards society, towards the elders, they follow the laws of the government. They follow the ways and duties of family persons. But their purpose in following those is to please Krishna. And they follow it to that extent, right? They don't follow it too much just for the sake of it, but they follow it to become, representatives of Krishna, to become like Krishna, the leaders of religion. So people come to them and say, oh, there's a religious person, a dharmic person. So this was the quality of Srila Prabhupada and so many great souls in our movement, that they were such great devotees, yet they were also perfect gentlemen and gentlewomen, because they were leading a path of spiritual life, a life of piety that was very transcendental. They were both performing their devotional principles, and at the same time, they're following the rules and regulations of the scriptures. So I'll stop here and see if there's any comments, thoughts, reflections.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, did you have to stop, Prabhuji? Can you go on?
I can do 10 more minutes. We actually started.
Yeah, I don't know about others, but it was so nice. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It was profound, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. No, thank you for the encouraging words. Anything else? Anyone want to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Many sentences stood out from today's class. One was, how austerity doesn't lead to bhakti, but it's the other way around. And so I think, at least, just this morning, my meditation was just that. And for me, it felt like, okay, resetting, whatever was happening in this morning's thought process. So that was personally nice for me. But the question that I had was, so years ago, I had heard our Guru Maharaj speak a class, and it was a recorded lecture, so I couldn't ask him at that time. And he was recounting his experience of traveling to, I think it was a Central American country. And, he would go there year after year. But this one particular year, he saw this very tall, high rise building, and the local devotee explained to him that that was a church, and how that particular church had grown in stature because. They had, it was like a very, very large congregation. Everybody was rushing to join that church. And so Maharaj asked, okay, what is it that's attractive to them? And apparently that church was saying, come here and pray to God, and become, and then prosper. So, this whole akama sarva kama, then, in one sense, I get it that we should be ultimately to go to Krishna. But in another sense, it also seems like, in one sense, like you're giving leeway to, so there is this high standard of pure bhakti. I don't know. I'm not able to verbalize the question because I'm also in between cooking lunch. So if you get my drift, could you answer me?
Yes, Mataji, I
Thank
get
you.
it. Actually, it's a good point that you brought up. Very interesting point. We can start bhakti and tell people about bhakti, by saying, like you're saying, engage in devotional service, love God and prosper. And then that becomes kind of like the motivation. And, where does it, that's not really what we are about also, right? And it's absolutely valid point. And the the as a means of attracting people to spiritual life, I think that's not the best strategy, because that is somewhat misleading. That's we're saying, become, what our slogan is, become Krishna conscious and be happy, right? Chant and be happy, worship the Lord and be happy. To specifically say that worship the Lord and prosper, I think the problem with that statement is that it's a false statement. Materially prosper, materially prosper. Now, if they're just saying prosper, that can be spiritual prosperity also, which is very nice. But materially prosper, that can be incorrect, because not everyone who worships God prospers. What the Bhagavatam is saying is the opposite. It's saying, okay, if you have material desires, you can still engage in devotional service and reach perfection and be happy for eternity. If you don't have material desires, you can still worship Krishna and be happy for eternity. That's what it's saying. Okay, you have material desires, but you can still engage in devotional service and be happy. But what we are saying is that this is what we are saying, the Bhagavatam. But to say that by worshiping Krishna, you will be materially prosperous, that is demigod worship. That's I'll worship someone and I'll get some material thing. That's demigod worship. But at the same time, even if someone comes with that motivation, as Krishna is saying in the Gita, they're still pious. Chaturvidha bhajante mam, right? They're still pious. But then among them, Krishna says the most pious is one who's coming just for me, to gain knowledge about me. So that's the best one, right? That's the highest devotee, the best devotee among the five. So we do make some discrimination that this is better than the other. The motivation is more pure. And given the philosophy, we want to encourage the pure motivation. So therefore, that's what we encourage. But the Bhagavatam is saying, and the Gita is saying, that even if someone's motivation is not pure, take to devotional service, you'll get those material desires satisfied, possibly, most likely, but then you'll get your spiritual taste, by which you won't even want those material desires. You'll get a real spiritual experience. So I think that's what the Bhagavatam is saying, that and we see that practically. Last point on this, that when we engage in devotional service for some time, automatically within our heart we get a sense of aversion to material things. Like automatically within our heart we want to become more Krishna conscious, less in material life. We want to reduce material things, increase spiritual things. It's so there. It's just like, we start to notice that, every time I go out and I try to, satisfy my senses through some restaurant or some shopping or through some material thing, like the experience is so much less satisfying than if I go out and do something spiritual, or stay at home and do something spiritual. And everything is spiritual. Shopping is necessary, but I mean, what I meant here was like window shopping, and just as a means of recreation, of fun. Spiritual things bring so much more happiness. Just my experience in family life, like, it's at the end, you feel so much more satisfied, and while you're doing it, you feel so much more satisfied. So in the process of devotional life, then we automatically want to give up these things. We automatically lose a taste for these things. Yes, thank you for that point. Because yeah, we don't pray Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. We don't actually pray to Krishna for these things. Um, so that is a difference. We know that if we have those desires, Krishna will purify, but we don't pray for them. Yes. Okay. Any last point? All right. Thank you so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda